What is book guilt?
Book guilt. Book guilt's awesome. I've basically spent a lot of time talking to people about how they read quite specifically, their actual kind of process. And book guilt I've always been aware of because I have suffered from it in the past, which is that feeling that you have to finish a book, essentially. That's the most obvious kind of book guilt. There's quite a few. But that weird idea that you have to finish a book. And I actually realised that I'm sort of serious about this, though it's a silly thing. It's actually a real problem for the book industry. I know people who haven't bought a book in like a couple of years because they haven't finished the last thing they were reading.
Really?
And it's a symptom of the way we've kind of added a lot of social issues to book reading and sort of ethics and perceived ethics, at least, in how people read. That they feel they've got some kind of issue, that they're bad people if they don't finish a book. And yeah, it's a bad thing, and we need to break it down. And I've spent a lot of time training myself out of that kind of idea that, you know, if you don't like a book, buy another one. You know, fine.
Sure.
We should be encouraging people to do that, right?
Do you think the publishing industry should embark on some sort of don't worry about book
like
guilt
outreach
campaign?
Program. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, public information campaign.
Sure.
That's a thing.
So, how are things going with the Open Bookmarks project?
So they're going well, in as such as the discussion is happening. Open Bookmarks is many things, and it may be other things in the future. It may be something quite specific. It may be an actual technical protocol. But equally, it's just a point of discussion, or at the start of a discussion. And I'm really excited that I'm now starting to see discussions happening around it. It's become a question that people ask. We've heard a lot about social reading in general at TOC this year, and starting to see some of the questions around open bookmarks, about the portability of your bookmarks, about archiving of those, around privacy and security of those. Those are all questions that rotate around open bookmarks, which sits in this space between the reading and the book selling process.
Now, in that space, is that the aura that you've referred to?
Around the aura is the slightly poetic term for it. There's a real psychological change that's happening around reading as we move from books to ebooks. It's not just a physical format change; it's a real change in our understanding of the text. And one of the ways we can see that is in this increasing separation between the reading experience and the book itself. And marginalia are a really good way of talking about that. Marginalia really show the use of a book, whether that's, you know, as simple as writing your name in the front of a book, or whether it's doodling and things, whether it's underlining, highlighting. All those are everything that happens to the book that isn't the artwork itself. That's its aura, essentially, in Walter Benjamin's terms. And that is kind of our future for the book. That is, you know, where our experience of the book is going to reside.
So, last question I have for you: that concept of aura, does that apply beyond just books? I mean, could it apply to something like bookmark collection through Delicious, for example?
Absolutely. So that's essentially the aura of the web, right? I mean, that's one of the ways in which we leave our own personal trace on the information that exists out there anyway. That information is kind of floating around. It only becomes useful and interesting in our interactions with it. So a collection of Delicious bookmarks is a really good example of that. And also what we're seeing now with Delicious, with this worry that Yahoo's going to close it down.
Right. That was a loaded question.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry out there,
no, not at all. I mean, that's exactly the kind of issue that we need to be thinking about quite seriously, because that is going to happen in ebooks. You know, I mean, it's related to that thing that happened with Amazon and the Kindle and Recalling 1984. There are these little tremors that we're starting to see happening in our information spheres that are going to have huge knock-on effects in later years. And so we really need to make sure that we're thinking about those things now, and as publishers making sure we're making the right decisions, and that, you know, that is one of our really strong values for the future.
Well, thank you very much for being with us. Appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.